I was starting. Okay. All right, guys. Hey, thank you for joining in. This Talon Frazier's Motivational Talks on WFNU 94.1 FM. And I wish I had my like handy dandy like sidekick Dakota, which is like my YouTube guy. He does everything for me. But since he's not here, I'm gonna give you a round of applause. This lady is a phenomenal comedic genius to me. Her story, I kind of like did like some own YouTube stuff, and her story is like phenomenal. I love how she just did it. She just went out and just did it. She tours all around New York City. She's from Buffalo, New York. She's hilarious. If you haven't seen her, which I know you have seen her, she is on Wildin Out. Oh my God, I want to talk about that too. A lot about that. But she's on Wildin Out, and she does a lot of things around her community, and she's been giving back and all the great stuff with that. So again, we have Maddy Smith. Thank you. I'm gonna add like clap saying.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me virtually. This is so great.
Most definitely.
Thank you for the incredible
Isn't
intro.
Oh yeah, no, most definitely. You deserve that. Okay, you deserve it. Especially with all these, like I watched the MTV battles, and you just hold your own. So I knew that you.
Thanks. They're very scary because everyone on the show is so good, and then you're just like, ugh. And like I feel like I'm a super easy target too, so it's hard to like hold your own and then also give it back without crying.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But you know what though? That makes a person. I feel like anybody that can like dish out jokes and stuff, they should be able to receive them. So when you're able to like go and see, people coming after you, I guess that's a good thing for you because they're not sure what you're equipped with, and then you come back like, Charlie.
Totally.
I've seen a few of those.
I would be nervous for the future. I would be nervous because I think season 1, I was like, ooh, I got secret cookings, and now I'm like, if we go into another season, I'm gonna be like, all right, they know my ways. I got to switch it up a little bit,
Yeah, you gotta change the dodge it up a little bit. Oh man. Okay, so how are we gonna get this interview going? So tell me a little bit about you. Who are you? Where are you from? I kind of let them know you're from Buffalo, but tell me who you are.
Totally. Obviously, Maddy Smith, short for Madeline. Let's see, I'm from Buffalo. I moved to New York City. I live in New York City. I moved here 5 years ago. And shortly after that, I started doing stand-up comedy, it was pretty much my life before the pandemic. And unfortunately, it's the most non-essential career I've realized this year. But and then people are always like, we need laughter. I'm like, but you really don't, right? Like, you don't need to see. It's been a very weird year. But before the pandemic, I was doing stand-up, I was doing roast battles and blah, blah, blah. And then a couple years ago, or no, it was last year, quit my day job when I got on Wildin Out. So for a long time, I was working 9 to 5s and then going out and do comedy at night, sleeping for a few hours, fucking up at my, I don't know if I can swear, messing up at my job.
Yeah, you're fine.
I'm fine?
We'll beat you.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Okay. I love that. You gotta maintain your relationship with the FCC,
Yeah. Very true.
But I am, I started comedy mostly because I moved to New York. I had no friends, but I also kind of figured in the back of my head since I was like a kid that I wanted to make people laugh. My parents were very hands-off, and I resent them for it, but I'm also thankful because...
Were they like parents that were like, no, you can't be a comic, it's not no money in it, or something?
Little bit. And I was raised in a very, like, not blue collar, but very, like, if you don't make money from a 9 to 5, like, not creative. I'm like a first generation creative. So when I started doing comedy, the first question was like, how are you going to get paid? Because my mom works at a hospital and my dad worked at FedEx. It was very like, you need to get health insurance.
Money at?
Yeah, you need your like little salary. And you need to get your little 2-bedroom house and stuff. And so it was very like, it was hard for me mentally to come out as a comedian because my family is just so strict. And I'm like, you bitches never gave me money. So,
I have to work for everything.
I know it. And like from a young age, they were like, we don't give you money. You're going to get a car for your birthday. Like you're going to get a hand-me-down car and you're going to go to work and you're not going to get any more money. So then when they were like weird about me doing stand-up full time, I was like, you haven't given me money literally
Like this
You
is I
didn't
could
pay
be
for
making me some
college.
money.
That's such a weird parent thing, but they just want you to be like covered and they don't want you to go into a field and that would
Well,
mess
they
you
don't.
over.
I think a lot of it is because with my parents, like they were kind of like the same way. They were like, okay, you need to get a job. Like this is how you set up your funds to buy a house and car. But then at the
Yeah.
same time, it was like my mother kind of used to sing back in the day, and she didn't make it. I'm sorry, mom.
No.
She didn't. It was incredible, right?
Yeah.
But like she was more like, okay, if you feel like this is something that you're good at and you love to do, just go try it.
Yeah.
But like, if it doesn't work, like, make
Right.
sure you have a backup plan. So I get
Dude,
that too.
you gotta have the backup plan. A lot of people think that they are too. Did I freeze for a second? I'm just gonna keep talking because the recording will indicate that.
Yeah,
A
yeah. I
lot of
about to say,
people.
yeah. Keep. You're good. You're good. You're
Okay.
good.
A lot of people think, oh, a backup plan is admitting failure. No, it's admitting the reality of your field because, especially for like stand up or even like radio, household names, there's like two of them. And
Yeah,
okay,
that's
your
true.
mom knows Amy Schumer and Chris Rock, and then everyone else is the rest of us. And so it's like once you look at the reality and look at the numbers, you're like, okay, I'm super funny, I'm super hardworking, but statistically, I will not be the Amy Schumer level. So let's kind of like back ourselves up a little bit without admitting defeat. You just have to do it
Right.
smartly, unless you have rich parents, which like you go,
Yeah. Right.
you
Yeah.
go,
Yeah. Then you're good. Yeah. You're paid. You're
you
straight.
do your
Yeah. After that, you're
thing.
fine now.
But if you have that, like your parents breathing down your neck, you have to like kind of like insist, like, oh, don't worry, I got this other thing going, and
Right.
I
Yeah.
got
You
my
kind of gotta convince them that I got a
yeah,
backup plan just in case.
totally. And it's just them caring.
Definitely
I
makes
mean, my
sense.
mom was the same way. She wanted to work in radio when she graduated college, and she would tell me like, if I only stuck with it. And, you know, because in your 20s, you make that decision between that passion that you have and the easy job that pays the bills. And both my
That's true.
parents, my dad wanted to be a musician, and he got his first job as like a dock worker at a freight company, and then he just
What-
did that
Do,
for 40
do you
years.
see? Okay, so do you think it was just like being comfortable? Like as soon as
Yeah,
they got the job, they're like, yeah. And see, I think
totally.
like a lot of oops, excuse me, sorry guys, we just fell off a little bit. It's all right.
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of things are kind of like that though. Like
yeah,
you get comfortable and working your 9 to 5 job or just whatever, and then you
totally.
kind of forget about the dream.
Yeah,
But like I feel like you should be able to do both. Like if you have a dream, like you got to keep like kind of like working your job, but still going and doing what you're doing,
yeah,
going at night and being
right.
able to do your stand up and stuff. You
Yeah,
still kind of got to promote yourself because anything can happen. Which that kind of
totally.
happened to you, right? Kind of.
Right. Anything can happen. And we also, I think, need to encourage people to just like pursue their passions without thinking they need to make $1 million off of it. There's too much
True.
like in America, there's so much like, oh, you play in a band? Well, what's the next goal? Rather than like, oh, you
Yeah.
play in a band? That must be fun. And there's
Yeah.
this
What do
like
you want to do with the? Yeah.
right. Why can't we just like, why can't there be more stand ups who like gig every weekend but still have a job and no one's like, oh, so you want to be Seinfeld? No, I actually just like doing
Right.
this. So
Right.
it's
Yeah. I just like it's my passion,
right,
kind of.
right.
Oh, okay. So okay. So that'll lead into my next question. Okay. So how did you like? How did you get this passion? You just kind of like made seeing people. What was the first thing that made you say I could do this? Like
I
like a
um
story. Like
I think
if you have one,
I
tell me. I'm
was
funny.
so here's the thing is I never knew like what stand up was. I didn't know like Tina Fey is in a stand.
What?
I didn't watch a lot of like I watched a lot of comedies like Dumb and Dumber and stuff like that growing up, but I never
Right,
watched
all the
like pure
classics.
stand up. So I never knew like Tina Fey isn't a stand up. I just knew like she's a comedian. I didn't know there was like stand up, improv, sketch, acting. So I was just like,
Oh,
so I went
okay.
in pretty blind. But I always knew I was funny because I would make like strangers laugh. I would go to parties and people would be like, "You're fucking hilarious. You need to be a stand up comedian." I'd be like, "I know, right?" But
Right.
but it takes a while. Like you have years, you have years of people telling you that, and then I think I didn't do it until I was 24 because it was like, oh my, being funny was my entire personality. So there was that like, if I take this to the next level and I don't do well, that's my entire personality. That's a failure. It was like kind of like if I,
She's like, I don't know.
Right. You're like, okay, maybe I was supposed to be
Wish or
smart.
not.
So I didn't do
Well,
it for a long time. And then I was like, I should really just do this. Everyone says I'm so funny. I'm really quick. I have amazing punchlines. And then I did it for the first time and I was like, oh, cool. Let's keep doing it. It was like less, you build up to that first
it was
time.
kind of
And
like
then it was
hop in.
like, what'd you say?
So was it like kind of like you just hopped into it then, kind of
Yeah. I
like
was
it
in
was
New
just something you
York.
said, hey, I'm gonna try it.
Yeah, because New York's like the center of comedy. And so I started like
Yeah,
researching, I
true.
started watching people's videos, I started looking at like, oh, there's like people who go through like the improv route toward SNL, and then there's more stand up, and I tried both of them. And then once I started doing stand up open mics, I just started doing it every night because you find the scene and you're like, oh shit, this is, no one knows that all these mics are happening every night.
Now, okay, now I gotta be honest because
Yeah.
now see, okay, so I gotta be honest here. Now I have heard with a lot of comedians when they first start their first comic or their first stand up, sometimes it's not always the best. Like,
Yeah.
did you ever get any like mean people?
Um,
How does
so
that
my
feel?
first
How do
time,
you like
totally, it's really hard, especially if you think that this is
and
your
try not to
passion.
cry?
Right. So my first time wasn't bad. I got a couple, it was literally in front of like five people because I showed up late. But in my defense, the mic online said 5:30 start, and then they started at 5. And I was like, well, I see what kind of industry I'm getting
Oh.
into. So so then I was like,
You're like,
I was
you're
like,
like, yeah, but
I was like, okay, I already don't respect you people. And then I got up and I went
you're
up,
like,
I did like a tight 5, and it was like random thoughts I had that day, but I knew like I prepped so much. I was watching all these videos. I was like looking up, I was research. I went to a few shows too, just like
oh, okay, so you
by
kind of
myself,
sneak.
because in New York you can be anonymous. You can like sneak into a back of a show and be like, "Oh, I see." I went to a bunch of stand-up shows and I was like, "Okay, I can do this." So by the time I went to that first mic, I was like mentally, I was like, if it goes badly, you just got to keep going. But it went pretty well. And then I kept going, and it like within a couple months, I was like, "Oh, here we go." There was like
It's
a
like practice
few,
made perfect, kind of.
yes, and there was like a few nights where I was like, "I don't know how this works," and I didn't get any laughs. But in my head, I was like, I had that delusion back then of like, just keep going. I don't have that anymore. Now I'm more like, you might not make it fully. But back then, I was like, no, you're the
You're
next.
right. You're right. Right.
Right. When you first start, you're like,
Right.
I'm gonna steamroll through all you people. You have that blind confidence that helped me going through my
Yeah,
first
yeah, that
year.
hungriness about you.
Right.
No, see, now I think that's the same. I'm the same way. I was doing that too when I came to radio. I'm like, hey, I got to try to be the best like
Right.
host, and like I'm going to be like better than Breakfast Club.
Right.
Like
Right.
no, I'm joking.
Right.
But you know what though? I
But
always
you
feel like
have
this.
that
You never
mindset.
know where life leads you.
You never
You
know.
have to
And when
have
you're
that. Yeah,
first
especially in this
starting, you get
business.
energized and you're watching sets and you're like, "Oh, okay, I could write better than who's famous right now in comedy." I don't you're watching Kevin Hart, you're like,
Yeah, let's throw
easy,
some shots out.
So you have that
Yeah.
confidence of like, she's not that funny. But then once you're in the
Yeah.
industry for a
See,
few years, you know how things work and you humble yourself a little bit.
a little bit, listen, a
Yeah.
little bit, just a little bit. I get you on that.
But I
I,
do
I
think
get you
that
on that.
I think that blind confidence your first couple years is super helpful. You need that ego.
Yeah, you do. You do. You
Hmm.
got to be a beast. Okay, so what would you say was the hardest thing to overcome, like on your journey to getting on Wild now, and,
Yeah.
all of this,
I think
touring or just whatever?
yeah, I think the number one thing for me that I've worked on, especially during the pandemic, just because I have way
Mm-hmm.
more time to sit around and examine my brain, is just like kind of not being emotional about the highs and lows. It used to be like I would have like or like a joke would bomb or like a wild and out, maybe a joke would bomb and you're like, fuck, dude, this is why you should have done it differently. And
Yeah, like dang,
but then on the flip side of
right.
that, when something does well, you're like, I'm a god, I'm moonwalking out of here. And
Yeah,
so
you're right.
I
I do
think,
this.
right, like flattening those responses, I think, and kind of just being like businessy about it and like just keep putting stuff out. And then I think on top of that is like keep working even if you don't get the response you want. Because there's something like I always had a hard time during the pandemic putting out content and like videos and stuff, and like something doesn't pop off and you're like, "Ugh, why do I do this?" But you have to remember,
Yeah. Like, are we doing something?
right? And you're like, "Ugh, no one likes me," and then you put out another thing and it pops off. And so I think it's
You're
like the
like, oh, they
same.
love me. No,
Right. So I
yeah,
think
I
it's
get
like
that. I get that.
just yeah, you have to think like, oh, I'm this is long term and this is my job. Think of it I think thinking of it as more as a job has really helped me. I'm just like, nope, it's
No,
Mondays, we're doing the post, and if people like it, I don't and then I also think on top of that, thinking if people like it, I don't care because I like it. Like you have to
yeah,
like
true. It's your
yourself.
opinion. You're the artist. Yeah,
Yes.
that's true. It's your content, and I think
Totally.
that's more so a lot of comics. Some people don't like a certain comic because they might be too outlandish, or
Right.
they might swear, or they. So I kind
Right.
of it just depends on what floats your boat.
I
I personally
know.
think that you're hilarious as heck,
Thank you. I
personally, and
appreciate
not
that.
just because you're doing an interview, which I do appreciate. But no, I really do enjoy what you put out.
Totally.
Okay, with that, okay, what's the what's the easiest thing you kind of through your career? What's the easiest thing that's happened, if any?
For me, I think the easiest thing is stand up. I really think, like, for me, as a now, like, kind of like wilding out and then also like internet comedian now, I think at the core of it, stand up is the easiest thing for me because I know I can get up there. I know like 90% of the time I crush. And so I know like do your thing and it's very relaxing for me to do. So I think at the core of it, just performing it comes to me very naturally. And that has kind of like been my driver for the past 5 years. And then other things that don't come naturally, like promotion, business,
Yeah,
networking, I'm
so
working on,
yeah, I
but
get
that
that.
is hard as
It's,
fuck. So the
I
thing,
know, especially when you if the camp's smaller than you
what? Wait, what's smaller than you?
start. Oh no, no, no! I was saying, especially like when you don't have like like a huge
Yes,
camp, like when you're like kind of trying to
when
figure
your
out the
camp is
game
small.
you're on, or just
Yes,
yeah, that's a
total.
little easier.
Before I had the pop of Wildin' Out, I was very like, okay, what's the first thing gonna be? I know I'm good, but
Right.
I don't have the followers. And then when the followers came, I was still like, okay, but I need more. And now I'm like,
Right.
no, we got it. Let's go.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. You're
Yeah,
pulling them in. But
yeah,
that's being able to put that content out and getting that platform to kind of show
yeah,
what you got too helps
yeah,
a lot and is a
totally.
blessing. Um, okay, so how long would you say it took you to kind of like uh be successful? If you even consider yourself successful, or like, how do you think
I would say currently
I would
I'm
think.
successful because my success is based on making money and just being artistic. Like it's literally
I feel you though.
um like I've gotten through the pandemic without having to get a job, like a regular job, because I keep
See,
getting like little gigs in, like, oh, I'm doing like a voiceover, it's 500, and then a little roast show, it's 600. Like every other week
that's
is like, oh
adding up.
shit. And so
Yeah, yeah, I got something.
I'm like, what the fuck? People are paying me. And so I think that's where it's like, yes, hell yeah. Before it was, and I think that for me, it's like, okay, so there was no Wildin' Out this year because of the pandemic. So,
Right.
and I was able to make it by financially just on my own stuff. So to me, that's like, yeah, that's awesome.
I mean, that shows that you're good at what you do as well.
Yeah,
Because a lot of these artists, they this pandemic is really just putting a toll on them.
it's
I don't think they
hard.
know how to like keep trying to go what they
Totally.
should.
You know who I
So
feel
when you can
bad for
find
the
that group, is great.
You know who I feel bad
Hmm?
for the most is like influencers who like have to get by on like detox tea posts and try to make their life create like I follow like
No,
some
for
people,
real.
right? Oh, I'm like, oh, you must be dying because they get to go to Malibu and do their little self. But now it's like, oh, we're realizing you guys are so lame, and so
Right, you got to
at
stay in
least
the
like
house and do your
artists,
promotions.
right? At least artists, you can create like funny posts and like stuff like that. But
Right.
they're just doing selfies in their beds. Oh, I feel bad for them,
It's tough.
honestly.
It's tough. It's
It's
tough
tough.
right now. I was laughing because I was watching it was Vlad TV and it was Boosie, and they were talking about, they're like, okay, with all this pandemic stuff, how are you like keeping everything going?
Right.
He's like, I got my rap snacks.
Right.
I think the chip. I'm like,
Oh.
well, at this time, it's time to do everything that you can do. Especially if you
Yeah.
know,
Any sort of
period.
post that someone makes that's like a sponsored post, I